It's a different day and age now, right? Coaching kids, when you tell their kid that they're not good enough, they don't take a step back. They go and try and find somebody else that'll tell them they're good enough. It takes more than just skill to be a professional soccer player. Anybody with above average talent could actually find a professional team to play on. My teammates used to call me raw meat because they used to think that my mum, she didn't cook the meat, she gave me it raw. Then I never forget it, we were in the Scottish Cup, so we drew Glasgow Rangers at Ibrox. I actually gave away a PK that day. Some of my friends says that I should get a prison sentence for that. There's 50,000 people there, and the only person I can hear screaming in this crowd is my mum. I don't know if you've ever seen the video online of when I lost the bet with these guys.
Oh, you wore the skirt?
It's not a skirt. It's a kilt.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Without a Doubt podcast. I am your co-host, Sergio. To my left is your host,
Rafa. It's weird being on the other side.
Yeah. So the reason I'm doing the intro today is because today we have a very special guest, especially for me. This is a person that influenced me a lot in terms of soccer. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Sergio. Yes, I did influence you a lot, especially when I cut you from my team. But yeah, my name's Neil Armour. I'm currently the boys director at West Coast Football Club, so thanks for having me. I know, obviously, Rafa came across you, tried to sign Rafa many times, turned me down many times. I was almost going to turn him down for a podcast, but, just to kind of get him back, but I decided to do Sergio a favour, So thanks for inviting us, guys.
Yeah, Coach. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and then we'll just kind of get started with your story about you and the game. So just take us back kind of to where it all started.
Wow, I mean, I go back to my days in Scotland when I was probably 8, 9 years old, and I used to just play in the street all the time. I used to live across the street from a farm, so you'd be running around the field dodging the cow paddies and diving around setting up some goals, so yeah. And then my life became upheaval. Somebody very close to me passed away, and we had to move house very suddenly, and we had to move to probably a great neighbourhood but a lot rougher, a place called Shortleys in Kilmarnock. And I remember on the Saturday that there was this club offering tryouts for like U9, U10 kids, and I wanted to go to the tryouts. My parents didn't really know the area very well, so the next door neighbour guy said he would take me to the tryouts, and he never showed up.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of my journey. The first time I was let down about 9 years old, Yeah. So, and my dad there was a club at the time called Springside Colts, and my dad's like, okay, I'm going to take you out to Springside for a tryout. And we drive out to Springside. My dad was a baker, and he was a baker for his whole life. And we go out to Springside for a tryout, and I can show up at the tryout. In Scotland, it can be pretty brutal, as you probably know, Sergio, being coached by me a little bit. We can be a little bit too honest at times. You know what I'm saying? But at least you always know where you stand with us, right? You always know where you stand with us, and that coach turned around and says to my dad, "Hey Willie, you're a great baker. Your son should get into the baking with you.
No way.
He's never going to be a soccer player.
Wow.
So that's what he told my dad, and my dad was like, all right, okay. So go back home, and my dad actually started a team there, and then my dad started a team at that club so that I could play on it, right?
Wow.
So my dad started a team at that club, and in the neighbourhood we lived in, 9 of the guys used to play on that team. And my dad used to drive them all to practice, and had 2-door sedan, literally 6 guys piled in the back, 3 guys piled in the front. One day we go round the corner, one of the guys flew out the passenger door, literally onto the street, right? Like at 10 years old, So, jeez. And he used to take us all to the training, and it was hard being coached by your dad, because my dad was very, very opinionated, but he'd probably the biggest influence in my career. And at U13 there used to be a club called Kilmarnock Colts, and that club used to come and pick all the best players from the region, right? And so like a year and a half on, they just went to the best teams and picked the best players, and they picked me and the guy who's still my best friend to today, Darren Henderson, to go and play on that team. And that's really where that team was like the best team in Scotland. And my high school team was also the best team in Scotland. So I went from, the guy telling me you should take up bacon to playing on one of the top teams. And back then, there was none of this 20-man squads or anything like that. There was the game day roster was 13, right? 2 subs. When you went in, you went in. When you went out, you went out. There was none of this. This is even at U13. There was none of this unlimited substitutes or anything like that, or 20-man rosters. We carried maybe 14 or 15 guys. And, if you were in the 13, and I always remember when I used to sit in the dressing room, and this is why it gets a bit frustrating today, like, maybe Sergio's heard me say this, and when you tell a kid, like, maybe Sergio's used to playing the 6, and I tell him, hey, you're going to play centre-back today, and he gets... I used to sit in the dressing room, and back then the numbers went 1 through 11, right? And I used to just sit in the dressing room, 10, 11 years old, with my head down, and just waited, Armour, just to get one of those first 11 jerseys.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't care what number it was. So if he called you number 1, you were the goalkeeper. Number 2, you were the right back. 3, the left back. 4, the right mid. 5, the centre back. 6, the sweeper. 10, the inside forward. We played with inside forwards back then. I just sat my head down. As long as he named me in that 11, I didn't even care.
Yeah.
We didn't care as long as I was on the field and I was playing.
How old were you when this was going on?
So probably about 10.
I feel like that's so young to have that mindset already.
But it's you just wanted to play. You just wanted to play. And then when I went to the better team, that's actually where my life changed for a long time. It's that team ended up becoming Scottish champions. The out of 15 guys on that team, 13 guys went professional, 2 guys never. Me and my best friend, right? But yet, after they all went professional, I don't want to say they failed or anything like that, but between me and my best friend, we played more professional games than all the other people combined.
Oh, wow.
And yet we never got selected by a pro team when we were 14, 15, because they signed like S-boy forms. Me and he was a little bit smaller, maybe no as good, ended up being an unbelievable player, And then I just had determination. I wasn't that skillful, but just a determination. And that club ended up, that's the first time I came to the United States.
What position did you play? I know you said you anything, but...
Yeah, so back then, at one point in time, I played a 10. I was inside forward, and then, a manager turned around and says to me one day, hey, you're going to be a centre-back, So I didn't become a centre-back till I was probably 14, 15, and I started becoming a centre-back, and I wasn't a very good one, So, I mean, it was, the team that I was playing on, the Commander Colts team, they ended up coming to the United States to play in a tournament when I was 12 years old, 13 years old. We came to Michigan and played in a tournament called the Dearborn Invitational. And I stayed with a family in Livonia called the Larsons. And to this day, 45 years later, I'm still good friends with them.
Oh, that's great.
I still stay in touch with them. I still go out and visit them. They come out here and visit me. The mum, Mary Jane, was amazing with me. Rick Larson was amazing with me. The next year, they came to Scotland, stayed with my family. The next year after that, when I was 15, I came here and stayed for 9 weeks by myself with that family in Michigan. And I toured all through the Canadian plains, down through the Rockies, been in so many states, and they took me all this tour when I came out here when I was 15. And then that's when I became, that's 15 and a half, that's when I decided to drop out of school. So in Scotland, you could leave school at 16. I was actually a year ahead of myself. I was horrible in school, I mean, at 15 and a half, I was just like, hey, I've had enough,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to leave, the teachers, was like, hey, I'm going to be a professional soccer player. I'm going to be a professional soccer player. Ended up leaving and quitting soccer completely. When I was 16, I just decided I had enough. I was going to be a baker and go to college to become a baker or become a chef or something like that. So I started going to what you guys would class as the equivalent of community college. Went to community college a little bit because I'd been baking for years with my dad. I worked with my dad 2 or 3 days a week in the bakery since I was 6, 7 years old. I used to go there So I knew I was a lot of experience baking, even at as young as 16, you know. And my dad was what they call, you know, a confectioner, where he did wedding cakes, birthday cakes. He did all these fancy cakes and all that. My dad was extremely talented. But that's when I became disorientated with the soccer, and I actually quit for about a year.
Sorry, I want to go back a little bit. Why? Well, when you're told like you should start baking, like you should give up soccer and start baking. What was your initial reaction to that? And two, how did that translate to then saying I'm gonna play professionally?
You know, I think at that time it didn't resonate with me. I still remember it to this day. The coach saying it to my dad, so it didn't really resonate with me. I probably started crying or something like that. I was probably like 9-10 years old. I probably started crying, but you know, later on in life, I had some things happen to me in the soccer where it was like, hey, I wasn't that talented, but I was going to make it to go pro no matter what. You know what I'm saying? And it was, but so I think maybe, you know, unconsciously it had an effect on me, because I never forgot about it even to this day. But I also, it probably had some positive effects on me, some negative effects, you know, because, I became very, very aggressive and very determined when I played. You know, it was like I kind of had an attitude when I played of kill or be killed. You know, it was just, some of my nicknames was like, my teammates used to call me raw meat. Seriously, you know, they used to call me raw meat because they used to think that my mum she didn't cook the meat, she gave me it raw, like a tiger or a lion or something like that. So a lot of guys called me raw meat, you know, because I played soccer like that. Not like you guys with a little bit of craft and guile and some skill, you know. I had very limited that, you know, and a lot of determination. But yeah.
What made you say I want to play professionally? Like, did you have like professional role models around you? Did you like how was that even a reality for you? I
mean, I grew up a Glasgow Rangers fan, right? Mad Glasgow Rangers fan. I've been Rangers fan all my life, and you know, I would watch my team play, you know, any opportunity. We only had 4 TV channels at the time, so you can make it soccer one day a week, maybe. You know what I'm saying? We didn't grow up with hundreds of TV channels, and you'd watch the highlights, you'd try and emulate your best players and all that. And, you know, I was just a mad Rangers fan, and just always thought one day, hey, I'm going to play for Rangers, That was all I wanted to do. You know, if I couldn't play for Rangers, I was going to stand in the terraces and sing my heart out, you know, and just go to the games. And, you know, to the detriment of my family sometimes, I still fly back for the games, you know. You know, I went to Seville for the Europa League final, and, you know, anytime I go back to Scotland, it's always round about Rangers games. I'm a member of the local Orange County Rangers Supporters Club here. I've been a member of that club for like 20 years, you know, so it's... So I think, you know, that was a driving force. But then, you know, sometimes when you get to 15, 16, you become a little bit disillusioned with things, you know. And, you know, I wasn't getting a game in the soccer team. People were telling me I wasn't good enough. And so I decided to quit, you know, to the detriment of my parents. Because it wasn't like I was a squad of 20 and I could hang around the squad of 20. I was, you know, there was only 14 or 15 players there. You either played or you didn't, you know. And so I quit, and I got a job, and I went to college for a little bit, for about 3 or 4 months, and then I got a job in a restaurant to become like a trainee chef, you know, and I did that for a little bit. And then my best friend again, Darren Henderson, you know, he was playing for a team called Belfield Boys Club that was run by a good friend of mine called Ronnie Scott. Not a good friend of mine at that time, but a good friend of mine today. But they were a U18, so in Scotland you went 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s, right? So they were having a tryout, and Darren was like, me and Darren were like brothers. Even today, he's like a brother to me. You know, he's like, hey, you got to come and try out. We need a centre half. You got to come and try out. And I was like, no. And one day he's like, it was that night, and I was working in the restaurant that day, you know, preparing the food and all that, peeling potatoes and vegetables and all that stuff. No machines those days, you know, he did it all by hand. And Darren was like, you got to come tonight, you got to come. So I had a morning shift, and then they wanted me to do a split shift. So it was like, you know, 10 till 2, and then he wanted me back in 5 till 9. But they didn't tell you to that day till you showed up, and then, you know, so I agreed to go to the tryout with Belfield Boys Club, who was one of the premier teams in Scotland, and I hadn't played for about a year, and Dan persuaded me to go back. And that day I went to work, and the guy was like, "Hey, you need to come back in for a split shift." I says, "Oh, but I'm going for a tryout tonight." You know, and I was 16 at the time. I was like, "I'm going for a tryout tonight." And he's like, "Well, if you go for a tryout, you're fired." I says, "Okay, I'll see you later. I'm out there." You know, and I went for a tryout, and I joined Belfield Boys Club. I became the captain very quickly. I was always, every team I played for, I eventually became the captain, was the leader of the team, you know. Not because I was the best player, probably because I was the most determined player, maybe the angriest player, you know.
Raw meat.
Yeah, raw meat player, you know. But you know, I played there for 2 years, and at that time, there's like called junior football. It's like semi-pro football in Scotland, and it used to be a very, very good level. So there's a lot of junior teams in Scotland. And when I was getting to the end of being 18, the next step was to go and play for a junior team. I had a full-time job at the time, so you were training 2 or 3 days a week. And I had 3 junior teams chasing me. You know, I had my pick of junior teams, and there was a guy called John Minford. I'll never forget it. Who was the manager of Beath Juniors in Scotland. And John, you know, the 2 other junior teams, and you think, you know, when I listen to kids now, and they're like 2 or 3 local teams chasing the kid, and your mind's a mess, and you don't know what to do. Let me tell you, if that's the hardest decision you ever have to make in your life's going to be pretty easy. Picking what team to play for when 3 guys are chasing you's an easy life, you know. Yeah. But again, I was like any other guy, 18. I was like, you know, my life's falling apart. You know, all these teams are chasing me. I don't know which one to pick. Who should I go and play with? You know, the 2 coaches were calling me up, because by this time I was a good player, right? Yeah. And they were like that. "Hey Neil, you come and play for us. We'll build the team round about you. We're going to make you this. We're going to make you that." And then I had this guy John Minford, who lived about a quarter of a mile round the road from me, round the street from me, showing up at my door and saying, "Hey Neil, I want to sign you, but you're not going to play in my team. I've got 2 guys that are better than you. You know, I got 2 guys that are better than you. You know, I get 2 guys," he says, "but if you come to me," he says, I'm going to work with you and develop you." He says, "and eventually I think you can be a good player, but you're not going to, you as an 18-year-old, I've got 25 and 26-year-old guys that are playing centre back. You won't get a game in my team." But every night he came to my house, asked me to sign for him. You know, and the other guys were telling me, "You come to me, Neil, you can play for me. We'll build the team round about you." And I signed for a club that told me I couldn't play, that I wouldn't be able to play for them.
Yeah, that reminds me of Matthias. So a friend of ours, he's Norwegian, and he decided he wanted to play collegiately, and he had his highlight video and resume, whatever, or CV, kind of passed around, and he had a lot of interest from these D1s. And it was the same thing where most of them were saying, like, "You're going to be our guy, you're going to be a starter," like similar, like, "We're going to form the team around you." And then at UCI with Yossi, it was more of like this is what I see you, where I see you need to improve in. I can't promise you any playing time. We have 2 center backs here that are solid. It just depends on who's performing while they're here, but I can guarantee you that you will improve while you're here, and I'll take you to that next level. And he ultimately went there, even though the other teams were telling him, like, "You're going to be the guy."
Absolutely.
What is that mentality? Like, what makes you decide that?
I think it's rejection at a young age. When I was young age, even although psychologically I don't think it affected me that much back then, I probably cried, like I told you, when I was 9 years old, when the guy tells you that, you know. But I think, you know, unconsciously it did something to my mindset, right? And I've had, you know, I think at that point in time, you know, the guy telling me no, you know. And I'm trying to think back to when I was 18, I probably could hear the guy telling me I was going to be a baker, no soccer player, right? And I'm like that, you know, you're not going to tell me no. And the guy John Minford was, you know, I'm still good friends with him today. He's a big reason that I made it to go professional. John himself had played in the pros as well. And, you know, he was telling me, like, hey, but he was at my house every day asking me to sign. But he was also telling me listen, you're going to be a project.
Yeah, it was like push and pull.
Yeah,
push and
yeah,
pull.
it was like, hey, you're going to be a project, you're going to be a project. And eventually I says, you know, it was like that. I didn't want to be his project. I was more like, hey, Joke, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to sign for you. And the other two clubs couldn't believe it. You know, they're like, hey, you're going to go there and you're not going to play. I said, don't care, I'm going to go there. And within a few months, I'm starting, you know? And within a few months, the professional clubs started coming out and inviting me out for tryouts. And I went for tryouts with many, many professional clubs in Scotland. I ended up going up to Dundee for a tryout when Dundee were actually in the Premier League. And, you know, the ex-Man United assistant manager, Archie Knox, was the head coach there. And I went up there for a week on tryout for, you know, with up at Dundee. And then I went up there twice on tryout, and then eventually, you know, it was a complicated situation at that time because I was working full time and, you know, taking time off to go to these tryouts and all that. And in Scotland at that time, you didn't make a lot of money, you know. Plus, you know, the morning I went for my tryout to Dundee, it was about 100 miles, so I had to stay up there in a week and stay with a family. Yeah. You know, that morning, you know, I crashed my car into a ditch after being out in a nightclub till 4 a.m. You know, and it was, and the worst thing about, no drinking or driving or anything like that, the worst thing about it was my dad's car. So I just left it in the ditch and jumped on the train and went to Dundee for the tryout, you know, and left his car in the ditch. So that didn't go down too well. But again, you know, I learned a lot at Dundee as well, right? You know, it's like when you go for tryout somewhere, right? Over here, you know, we bring you in and, you know, we hug you and we tell you we love you, Rafa, and you know, I really need you, Rafa, and all this stuff. That doesn't happen in Scotland, you know. I mean, I remember being at Dundee on tryout, and that Thursday night we're playing Rangers in a League Cup, a league tie, and for the reserve team.
Yeah.
And I was playing centre half alongside a very famous Scottish player called Colin Henry. Colin ended up playing for Scotland about 75 times, won the English Premier League with Blackburn Rovers. Jeez. Big Scottish guy with long blonde hair. Colin, his nickname was Cake. He was just in the reserve team at that time. He was starting his career as well. And, you know, we come in from training, we're playing Rangers that night, and we just got done with training that morning. And we were in the tea room, and I can't say what was said on camera, but if you could think of every expletive that you could imagine come into your head, even the good expletives and the really, really bad ones, you know, I'm sitting in the tea room with about 40 guys, and he's screaming and shouting at the manager, and he's freaking out, and he's like, you effing this, and fuck you, you useless piece of this, you useless this, you know. And I'm like that, I'm like, holy smokes, I'm sitting with my head down, I'm like, he's giving it to somebody. And then he starts screaming, you look at me when I'm talking to you, you look at me when I'm talking to you, right? Right, look at me when I'm talking to you. And big Colin Henry nudges me, says, Neil, he's talking to me. I'm a guest player. There's no way he's talking to me. And back then we had some crazy hairdos, you know, we had these hairdos where it was kind of like a glorified mullet but you would get the back of your hair permed, right? And the top would be short and that. We used to call it like a Charlie Nicholas, which I never had one of them, but I did at this time, you know. And he's, you know, I'm there and we're playing Rangers that night, and I'm a guest player, and he's like that. If that hair's not gone by tonight, don't even come, just go back home. Don't even show up to the game.
Really?
That hair of yours needs to be gone by tonight. And luckily for me, you know, God rest her soul, Colin Henry's girlfriend at the time, who became his wife, and she passed away a few years ago with cancer, his wife was a hairdresser. And he says, big man, just come down to my apartment and then my girlfriend will cut your hair. So you can imagine my mum, right? My mum's driven 100 miles up to watch the game. Her son's got this beautiful dreadlocked hair, right? And all of a sudden she shows up at the game and it's all gone, right? And I mean all gone, like almost like
nothing.
You know, from like down to here to like nothing, like maybe this long the hair, you know. And my mum's like, what happened to the hair? And, you know, Scottish mums, you know, they're like Mexican mums, right? You know, it's like, you know, except maybe a little bit worse, you know. But and no disrespect to Mexican mums, right? My wife's Mexican, so my wife's family all live in Mexico. But the you know, my mum's like, what happened to your hair? And I tell her the story, and she's like, I'm going in to see the manager. And I'm like, Mum, no, you're not. No, you're not. No. You're not, you know. And then, you know, they invited me back up, and then eventually told me there wasn't a spot for me there. And then I'd been invited to train at that time with a team called Greenock Morton. They were actually the last team to ever play in the Scottish Premier League as a part-time club. And, you know, a very famous manager called Alan McGraw, you know, was a so you back then you were allowed 3 trials with a pro team. Then they had, so you could go guest play 3 times. After the 3rd time they had to offer you a contract, you couldn't go back. And I became a little bit disillusioned. I was playing with you know, Beith juniors, and I was doing well, and all the scouts were coming to watch me and invite me out, and I'd go for 2 games, nobody would sign me. I'd go for a game, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my junior game, you know. And you know, Morton came, I played 1 game, played 2 games. They asked me to come for a 3rd game. I thought, oh, you're just looking for players to come and help you out, and I'm like, I'm not interested. So I turned them down, you know. And they, you know, the scout kept coming back and saying, hey Neil, could you come and play? And I'm like, no, I don't want to play. And John Minford was like, big man, just go one more time, you know. And then the manager sent, you know, called me up. McGraw says, listen, if you come and do well this time, I'm going to sign you. Right? So I'm like, okay, I'm there. So I go to the game, and he said, well, you never did as well as you did the last 2 times, but I'm still going to sign you. You know, so that's when I signed my first professional contract, £27 a week, $40 a week, you know, to play professional soccer.
And how old were you?
19.
19?
Mm-hmm. And then I got expenses. The field where we trained was 45 miles from my house. That might not be a lot in California, but that's a long way in Scotland, you know. So signed that contract. Did very, very well there. Was captain of the reserve team. Should have been in the first team a couple of times. Made the bench a couple of times. But again, you know, like, you're a young guy. You're you know, I wasn't afraid to speak my mind. So like, any time I thought I should be playing, I was on the manager's door. You know, play me. You know, and he was like, you're too young, we're in the Premier League, and I'm 19, 20 at the time, and you know, and I'm like, play me or let me go, play me, you know. And then, you know, at the Christmas, the chairman came to me and said, hey, we're going to offer you a 3-year contract, right? So I was, you know, and you knew when you were getting cut from a club at the end of the season, because you got a letter in the mail the night before you were going to practice. You sent you a letter, you're retained or you're cut. That was how they told you, right? And at Christmas, they had, this is after 3 years of being there. At Christmas, they had major financial cutbacks. They'd offered me a contract. I was still on the table, hadn't signed it, and at the end of that season, they let me go. You know? So sometimes, you know, you places, times, decisions, you know, I was very, hey, I should be playing. I was going, oh, don't play me, let me go, you know. And, you know, yeah, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that goes against you, you know. So I ended up going back to the juniors, you know, the junior football. Played with a club called Kilbirnie Lakeside, actually Beith Juniors' biggest rivals, and I ended up being a Scottish international there for the you know, the juniors. That's called the semi-pros. Became junior international there, captained that team for 2 or 3 years. The manager had been the manager for 28 years. Bobby Davidson, his name was, Old Scony Davidson, we called him, and he was a great guy. He was a great guy with a great team. You know, we had, you know, I ended up getting capped at that time, but then he retired and we got another coach. And again, you know, soccer's a weird, became a little bit disillusioned again, and I wanted to go back to the pros, and I knew I'd screwed up, you know, and I was like, you know, when, I'll back up a little bit. When I left Morton, I signed for a club called Stranraer. You know, left Morton, went to Stranraer. Alec McInnesby was the manager, great guy. Me and him, still friends to this day, but Alec McInnesby was the only soccer coach that I ever knew anywhere in the world that never swore. You know, never cursed. You know, it was flipping, blinking, blooming, right? You know, you're blooming, flipping, blinking this. You know, it was seriously. I'm not joking. Never cursed ever in his life, and that's unusual for a coach.
It's kind of like you.
Yeah, kind of saying me. Except I don't say flipping, blinking, blooming. You know, but yeah, that's what he used to come in. He'd be screaming at you in the dressing room. Armour, you blooming, flipping, blinking. You know, like. Great guy, absolute great guy, you know.
What was his reasoning for that? He just...
I don't know. He's just he was a great guy. I'm still friends with him today, you know. Still friends with him today. But that was just him. So like, you know, I would be getting in arguments with him, and I'd be cussing F and this and F and that. He'd be like, Neil, you're going to use that language, the conversation's over. And I'd be like, it'd be even worse. And he's like, no, you can use flipping, blinking, blooming just like me. You know, and I'm like, you know, it's, so he was, and that year was, you know, I was working in financial services and I was making a lot of money in financial services. And so I was playing soccer part-time, but still in the professional leagues. Mm-hmm. And then I never forget it, we're in the Scottish Cup, so you can play the Premier League teams in Scottish Cup.
It's like the FA.
Yeah, and so it's the Scottish FA Cup, and that year the national stadium in Scotland is Hampden Park. Believe it or not, it's owned by an amateur team in Scotland. It's not owned by a professional team. It's owned by Queen's Park, which is an amateur team in Scotland. So we drew Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup. I'll never forget it. We went to Hampden Park and we tied 0-0 with them. And right after the game, they made the draw for the next round of the Scottish Cup, and we drew Glasgow Rangers at Ibrox. So we drew Glasgow Rangers at Ibrox, and obviously I'm a mad Glasgow Rangers fan.
That's crazy.
Every time I wasn't on the soccer field playing, I was there watching Rangers, you know, playing, you know, and I'd played against Rangers. I'd played at Ibrox multiple times when I played with Greenock Morton in the reserve league. You played also at the home stadiums. They don't do that now. You know, you play at some lesser ground stadiums, but back then you played in the home stadiums. So we get to go to Hampden go to Ibrox Stadium. No, we tied 0-0 with Queen's Park, and they make the draw. We play Glasgow Rangers as winners. So all of a sudden we were on £50 a man to beat Queen's Park to begin with, and once the draw was made and you played Rangers, because you got half the gate.
Yeah.
So half your 50,000 gate, we played in front of 1,500 maybe every week. So our bonus went from, you know, £50 a man to £250 a man, which was big money then, because I was making probably £30 a week or £40 a week, right? Yeah. So we had to play them in Stranraer. Place was sold out. Place was rocking. Stranraer was a great place. You know, a great place. It was like 2,500 there. Place is packed. You know, and we beat them 2-1.
Wow.
So now we're going to Ibrox. So when you're playing at that level, then you know you go for lunch in a hotel. It was a McDonald's hotel, it was called, and then they send the police outriders. The police all come, and you get police escorting your bus right into the stadium, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts, and we went out there, and you know, some people will laugh at this, but we got battered 8-0. You know, we lost 8-0 that day. Oh. And if you actually look it up, I actually gave away a PK that day. There was a guy, very famous player, ended up playing for Liverpool, a guy called Mark Walters. And, you know, he comes into the box, does a little shimmy, and, you know, I still say today, if they had VAR back then, he would have got done with diving. Some of my friends says that I should get a prison sentence for that, you know. So it's kind of somewhere in between. That was back in the season 88, 89, you know.
You smashed it.
You know, listen. see today when you get a PK, right? It's when you get a PK, you have to have control of the ball to get a PK. Like he'd already lost control of the ball. It went out for a goal kick. Yeah, I came in a bit late, but I got there as fast as I could. Right? It's you know, so that was my next day. It was all over the newspaper, and you know, and that was an amazing experience. You know, we got smashed, but just going out there and you know, and I still say to this day, right. My mum, God rest her soul, there's 50,000 people there, and the only person I can hear screaming in this crowd is my mum, right?
That's great.
You know, I mean, literally, you're standing on the field, you think the noise is deafening, and I can hear my mum shout, "Come on, Stranraer!" Standing in the crowds, shouting away, but then, it's always interesting,
What did your parents think when you, like, at a very young age, saying that you, like, dropping out of school, wanting to pursue professionally? What did they think about that?
Well, I didn't really have to drop out of school. Nobody stayed past 16 in Scotland at that time,
right.
So I just never went back after 15 and a half, But,
or just the idea of you wanting to pursue professionally, what did they think about that?
I mean, they loved it. They loved the soccer. They loved coming to play. My mum hated the fact on the field I would curse and swear and things like that, so she would give me into trouble when I got off the field, I mean, obviously, I never ever cursed in front of my parents or anything like that, but my mum would come to me after the game, "I'm not coming to watch you play anymore. Your language is terrible on the field," It's like, so it's like she wouldn't say me. And then I had 3 younger siblings, 3 brothers, and they were all better players than me, But my dad was always saying, "Your brothers are better players than you," but they never played at the level I played at. But my brothers were better players than me, But they, again, it takes more than just skill to be a professional soccer player. I actually think anybody with above average talent could actually find a professional team to play on. It just depends on how determined are you to go and find that team.
Yeah.
I always tell the story when I left Stranraer, I went back and I played for. I wanted to go back to the professionals again, and I called. There was 40 teams in the Scottish Division professional teams. I called every single one. The team that was in last place was a team called Albion Rovers. They had 10 points in the lowest division in Scotland, and I called them up and asked them if I could come for a tryout. A guy called Mick Oliver was the manager. Great guy. Ended up being the assistant in the Scottish national team and that. And Mick invites me up. I was banned from driving. I was going through a bad time in my life. I was banned from driving and things like that. So, I had to catch a bus at 2 hours to a place called Coatbridge. Like 3 buses get there, no cell phones. And I show up. It took me like 2 hours to get there. I show up and practice was cancelled. So I pick up. I get to a payphone box here and I use the payphone and I call the manager and he didn't care. He really never cared. It was just like, "Hey, sorry, Neil, I forgot you were coming tonight." It's like, "Hey, if you want to come back on Thursday, you can come back on Thursday, right? But hey, if you don't want to come back on Thursday, I totally understand. Up to you. Thanks, bye."
Wow.
Right? Do you think I went back on Thursday?
Yeah.
Of course, right? Of course I went back on Thursday. Got back on that bus, went up there, right? And he kept me around for about 6 weeks or something like that. He kept me training, going up there 2 days a week, never offered me, hardly ever spoke to me. And then one day we were playing Clyde in a pre-season scrimmage. Clyde were a Division 1 team, we were Division 2. And we were up 1-0, and I go up to head a ball, and the striker throws an elbow and opens my face wide up, and you have to have a doctor at all these games. I ended up needing 17 stitches in my face, right? And the doctor's like, "It's 25 minutes in the game." The doctor's like, you need to come out, So my face is wide open. And the manager, so the game goes to 1-1 and the manager's in a meltdown on the sidelines. Fucking this. And again, I'm just still a guest player at this point in time. And he turns around and he points to me and he goes, and look at effing you. You can't even play either. Look at you, you're soft, And I was like, I'm like, "What are you talking about? I can't play." "Of course I can play." Right? My face is out here and the doctor's like, "No, he can't play." And he's like to the doctor, "You need to shut up." He goes like, "Can you play?" Right? And the doctor's like, "You can't play." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can play." He says, "Okay, ref, put me back in." 2 days later he signed me. So you think he signed me because I was an unbelievable player? Or do you think he signed me because I need somebody with that type of attitude in my team?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could still play and I was a decent player. I was very, very quick. I was aggressive. I was good in the air. But do you think, the guy's like, "Hey, there's lots of players like this guy." But that time, you could see the bone in my face. I needed inside stitches, outside stitches. And he's like that. He says, "Can you play?" A doctor's like, "No." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can play." He's like, "Okay," puts me back in. You go to jail for that in California, by the way. you know. But again,
don't try it.
You know, but again, it's like you know, you guys that have played at a decent level, right? There's a difference between being injured and being hurt, right?
Yeah.
Right. You know, if you're hurt, I mean, I played for 20 years hurt.
Yeah.
You know, when you're injured, you're injured.
I'm
You
never.
know what I'm saying?
You're never 100% anymore.
You're never 100% anymore. If you train every day, you're hardly ever 100%. So they signed me, and then like about 2 months later, the manager got fired, lost his job. We lost like 5 games in a row, and he lost his job, and I became. Again, the new manager didn't like me, wanted rid of me from day one, says you're getting out here, but they wanted money from me now. So now I was tied, and you know, they wanted money for me, you know, so that was a whole different ball game now. So again, the juniors came knocking, right? And there was a junior club called Kilbirnie Ladeside, not Kilbirnie, Cumnock Juniors. It's like a Rangers Celtic thing. You either play for Cumnock or you play for Auchinleck. You don't play for both.
Yeah.
You play for Rangers, you play for Celtic, you don't play for both. So I became a Cumnock guy, and I was the most expensive player in Scottish junior football history at that time.
Oh, wow.
Right? They paid me a lot of money just back then, which was a lot of money, £4,500. That was back in '93, right? And giving me like 40, I was making triple the money I was making in the pros, right? And played 6 games for him. The coach got fired, and it's like the coach from Rangers getting fired, and they hired the coach from Celtic and put him in.
Wow.
And so I was like that. I ain't playing for that guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, I'm like,
That's your rival.
yeah, that's my rival. So they give him the, and I worked in Johnny Walker's whiskey factory at the time, and the guy's son they gave the job to was my supervisor, right? So it was you know, so he comes and coaches the first game, you know, and I was a bit of a hothead, you know, but he comes and coaches the first game. No, I didn't coach the first game. He was there watching the first game. I was captain, and the team we played was down to 9 men. I scored in the last minute to make it 2-1. I was a centre back, and I'm in the dressing room after the game, and I'm giving the players, you know, like, you know, you guys are crap, you this, you that, you know, doing the captain's job, and then he walks in and he wants to make an example of somebody. Well, he had tried to sign me for the club 3 times, and I turned him down 3 times when I was at other junior clubs. So he came in and he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and you know, you've got screw and studs, and he pushed me across the dressing room, and I slipped and fell and hit myself on the bench, you know. So, you know, I mean, I'm 24, 25 at this time or something like that. So I just stood up on the bench and launched myself across the dressing room and grabbed him by the throat, you know. And that was, all the players had a hold of me, my body was vertical, and he was going blue. I'm choking him out, right? Like, right? And like, people are screaming to get me off him, and somebody runs out and screaming at my dad. My dad was outside. My dad comes in the dressing room and pulls me off him, you know.
Jeez.
And like, you know, I'm like, I'll never play for you, you know. It's like, you know, it's like, this isn't your club, you know. And I walked away. They asked me to come back multiple times after that.
Really?
I'm probably still signed there to this day because they retain you every year in Scotland. They have a system where they can retain you. So if I probably went back there and tried to play, they'd probably still have me retained. But that's when all of a sudden, you know, I'm like, hey, you know, I got to get out of Scotland. You know, I've got to get out of Scotland. And I had a friend, Derek Hunter, that I'd played with when I came to America when I was 11. He'd just come back from Hong Kong, and he's like, oh, I can get you to Hong Kong. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And he's like, but he never did it. And again, when people, you know, like, let you down, or they say you're going to do something, you don't do it, and then I get the bit between my teeth, and I'm like, so I start calling everybody. And eventually, this is no word of a lie, there's no cell phones back then. It was September '94. I'm sitting in my parents' house at 2:00 in the afternoon, and a guy from England calls me, and he says, hey, I heard you want to go and play in Hong Kong. And this is on like a dial phone, there's no cell phones.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. He says, well, we don't have anything in Hong Kong, but it's the very first year of the Chinese Professional League. He says, and one of the biggest clubs in China need a centre back. It was a team called Guangzhou Apollo. I'd hardly left Scotland. I was 27 years old, never left Scotland. I says, oh, let me think about it. I didn't even have a passport. He says, no, you can't think about it. We've got a flight booked for you for Saturday morning.
Jeez, what day was it?
It was Thursday. And he says, you have to tell me yes or no right now. So I said, right, okay, I'll do that. I'm thinking, great. How bad can China be? Chinese food in Scotland is magic. It's great. It's the best food in Scotland. It's nothing like the Chinese food. So I get my passport the next day. I get on that plane. I go to China. I go to fly to Hong Kong. 2 Chinese guys come and pick me up at the airport with my name shown. Don't speak a word of English. I get on the train from Hong Kong to a place called Guangzhou, and the name of the club was Guangzhou Apollo. And show up at the station, the press are there and all this stuff, and you know, the Guangzhou Apollo company that owned them. Have you heard of Guangzhou Evergrande? Like one of the biggest, most richest clubs in the world it was. Guangzhou Evergrande. So that was the same club I played for, except it was called Apollo at the time. But Evergrande's one of the biggest companies in China. They're a real estate company. They hit a lot of trouble recently. So that team got relegated. So I show up, it's the first year of the Chinese Professional League. I'm the second foreign player to go to China and play. And China's, I know you guys just got back, some of you guys got back from a trip. China today is no China in '94. Trust me. You know what I'm saying? You know,
I trust you.
It's not China in '94. I got out of the station and they introduced me to a guy called William, and they say, he's your full-time interpreter. There was nobody spoke English or anything like that. They trained 3 times a day, and I mean brutal training. It was his first year. It was sponsored by Marlboro cigarettes. That shows you how flawless the league was run, right? And then, you know, I never settled there. I was there 4 or 5 months, never settled. They played in front of 40,000 every week. It was an amazing experience, but I just didn't settle there. And I get the opportunity to go to Hong Kong. Stayed there, played for 5 years, played with 3 different clubs. Yeah, I stayed there for 5 years, played with 3 different clubs, met my wife there.
And she's Mexican?
Yeah.
My wife's Mexican American, yeah.
She was in Hong Kong?
She was there. She was a model and a makeup artist at the time.
Wow.
She was looking for a rich sports star husband. I had to say that just in case she actually watches the podcast. You know what I'm saying? I got to play it up a little bit. You know, we literally got married after like 6 weeks of knowing each other.
What?
You know? Yeah.
That's crazy.
She says I never actually asked her to marry me. We just kind of got married. But I did ask her to marry me 5 years after we were married, you know.
How does that work?
Yeah, it worked out okay. We already had 3 kids by that time, so she couldn't say no. So she couldn't say no by that time, you know. But I mean, I loved the first year in Hong Kong. I played with a team called Happy Valley, and we got to the final of the League Cup that year, my very first season, and right before Christmas, I went in a tackle and I broke my kneecap, and I didn't know it was broken at the time, and you know, just early January, I was with this little Chinese herbal doctor who was, you know, from mainland China, didn't speak a word of English. So, you know, we had a guy called Alan Rees, who was my good friend, who was an Australian Chinese guy, Hong Kong guy, who spoke Cantonese and would translate us all. Sometimes we'd translate what you told him, sometimes he would translate just to get you into trouble. It just depended on what part of the translation he did, you know. But first 5 minutes of a game, and I was running for a ball, and all of a sudden I banged into a guy, and I was like, oh, that hurt. And I didn't go down injured that much, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, but it was first 5 minutes, and I played the whole game. And next day my knee was all kind of swollen, and the little Chinese doctor's like, he's like, hey, you just need to strengthen the muscle. The muscle's a little bit weak. So I was doing like crouches and all that. And we had a game that week, but the following week we had a massive game. So that week I missed the game. The coach didn't want to play me because I hadn't really been training every day, you know. And he says, just rest it 1 week because we need you for next week. And so I rested it for another week, and we had a game. It was a huge game. And that morning I woke up, and my friend. I says to them that something wrong with my knee, you know. And they were like, yeah, you shouldn't play. And I'm like, no, you can't. You cannot say anything to the coach. I need to play tonight, you know. but I knew there was something wrong with it, you know. So I went out that night. We won 5-2. The next day, my knee was this size, massive. Went to the clubhouse where the club was located in Causeway Bay.
How'd you end up playing?
So crazy.
Just stupidity, you know.
Painkillers, nothing.
No, nothing. You know, so
you were in pain the entire game.
Yeah, I was in pain, but the you know, it's amazing what the human body can do, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I go in there that next morning. They get the interpreter in. They send me for an X-ray immediately, and I'm walking through the streets of Hong Kong analysing my own X-ray. I'm like, knee looks good, you know. I had no clue what I'm looking at, you know. And then take it to the doctor in the clubhouse, and he says, "Oh, your kneecap's completely broken," you know. And so they want to get you to see a surgeon. We have a cup final coming up, so I'm like, "Hey, get me to a surgeon today." But I would only see a surgeon that was qualified from USA, UK, or Australia. Right? I wouldn't do a surgeon from China or anything like that. They actually wanted to send me to China and open the knee up and bathe it in Chinese herbal medicine and then put me in a cast. And I was like, I ain't going anywhere near China for that kind of stuff. And listen, that stuff works for a lot of people, just not for me. But so they set up an appointment. I went and see the doctor, the surgeon. He was actually he actually graduated from St Andrews in Scotland. And you know, I was there with the coach, the general manager, the interpreter, everything like that. Surgeon obviously spoke English, and they were like that. You know, the surgeon's like, he says, you obviously couldn't play with your knee like this, and he says, you know, the pain must be excruciating. And the coach says he played 2 games. The surgeon says that's impossible.
Wow.
You know, and but then so he decides to do the surgery. But when he opened me up to do the surgery, because I'd been playing, the bone was rubbing together and it became fragmented. So like when you break a stick, you can go by that and put the bone back together. Because I'd playing, this pipe might be jagged, this part's round, it didn't fit anymore. So my surgery took like 6 hours. And the funny story in the surgery, I wake up and it's like, I'm in a private hospital and all that, right? And so the way they do it over there, I bring my own private surgeon. He rents a studio just like this, like an operating theatre.
Yeah.
And then he rents it for so many hours, and then he comes into the hospital and he rents a room and he rents all the equipment, and he just mobile. He comes in there, and I never forget waking up and I thought they had cut my leg off, right?
Oh my.
Right, so I'm like, is my leg gone? You know, and you're feeling down to see if your leg's still there, and I'm like, oh, my leg's still there. The pain was unbelievable, right? And the poor little Chinese nurses, I feel bad for them even today, but like, you know, they're like, the Chinese nurses come in and they're like, you know, my friend was there and the Chinese nurses are like, I'm like, you need to give me something for the pain. And I'm like, you know, like,
Yeah.
you need to give me something for the pain. And the nurses like that, you know, we already gave you a shot of more. Now my surgeon's already gone home, so he has to approve everything. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And the poor nurse, she says, we gave you a shot in your left thigh. And I'm like that. Are you effing stupid? No, we gave you a shot in your right thigh. I says, are you effing stupid? It's my left leg that hurts, not my right leg. You know, I'm screaming that. I didn't realise, like, they give you morphine. It doesn't matter where you give it. It's like, you know, it's just like, so the little girl's like panicking and running around the hospital. She gets my surgeon on the phone. They're like, just give him whatever he needs. They come in and give me another shot in my left leg. I'm like, that's better. You know? You know, and I did this surgery because they said I'd be back playing like in 6 weeks, and I was out for 9 months. So, yeah, I had all kinds of complications and all that. But again, you know, it's like, you know, and then at that time, you know, I ended up, you know, I moved to a different club, and we took a lot of Scottish boys to Hong Kong. You know, a lot of pretty well-known Scottish boys to Hong Kong, and then me and my wife, it was, you know, I was player coach of a team called Hope at the time, and you know, Chinese people are big on face, you know what I'm saying, and it's like, you know, one night, you know, after the game I'd been coaching, I was the coach, I never played, and I said, you know, it was 1-1, and we said, hey, we should never got a PK, and that's automatic loss of face to the Chinese people, and they come in and they were try to get me to sign a letter to basically fire myself, right?
Oh, wow.
But But I refused, and then we came to a settlement. Great, I still talk to the guy that owns the club even today. We came to a settlement, and at that time, me and my wife wanted to start a family, so we moved back to America. I already had my green card for a couple of years, and we moved back here and settled in Orange County, and I ended up. I had no interest in coaching at West Coast, no interest in coaching either youths in America, I didn't really want to deal with the parent aspect of it.
Yeah.
So Tony Bruce, right? R.I.P. Tony.
Yeah, rest in peace.
I met Tony a couple of months after getting here, and I was up in Lancaster, and I told Tony I have no interest in coaching youth soccer here, and Tony took that as an insult. He spent the next 2 hours basically ridiculing me because, you played all this time, and he was a Celtic fan as well. So, but a good guy. He was one of the good Celtic fans. There's no many of them. Let me just tell you that, right? But there is a few. And Tony's telling me, you should be giving back. You should be doing this. By the end of that day, I was making phone calls, and I spoke to Oliver Weiss, and I ended up coming to West Coast, and I've been at West Coast ever since. Coached on the boys' side, had 3 daughters, coached on the girls' side, come back, coached on the boys' side some more.
How old were you when you started coaching?
Probably 35. I came here and played for the Utah Blitz up in Utah for a little bit. And, got a bad injury up there, tore my MCL, getting an argument with my wife the night they were flying me up there, and my wife's like, I hope you break your leg. And 5 minutes into the game, I tore my MCL.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So when you think there's no a big guy looking over you upstairs, obviously he was like that. Hey, you didn't treat your wife right that night, big man. You're going to feel the pain tonight. You can feel the pain. I'm calling my wife from the hospital. Why did you tell me that? I've torn my MCL. I'm finished. So that was So I ended up coaching at West Coast, and it was Oliver asked me to come on board, but I mean, I've had a lot of good influence on people. Billy McNichol's a big influence in my life. Oliver, obviously. West Coast, I've been at West Coast for 20 odd years, obviously now the director, but you just it's a different day and age now, right, though. Coaching kids, like the way I might have coached kids, and I'm not saying it was bad or indifferent or anything like that, guys like Sergio. I mean, I remember Sergio playing on Kirsch's team, right, with Gilbert and all those boys, right, Angel Ariza, Alexis Garcia, and all those guys, and Gilbert's son, and it's like, hey, then all of a sudden I take over the team. I'm like, hey, Sergio, and this is where people in this day and age, when you tell their kid, that they're not good enough, they don't take a step back.
No.
They go and try and find somebody else that will tell them they're good enough. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be fair. I thought Sergio had actually done that. So just saying a little bit about Sergio, and I thought Sergio had done the same and just left the club. I didn't realise till we merged the birth years. And I needed a 6. I had a really good 2000 team, right? Remember?
That team was
I had an unbelievable 2000 team.
Well, that's the team he played against.
Yeah, but I didn't have a 6. And I show up against Braden one night, and Braden's got this kid, and there's a 6. And I'm like, who's the boy? Who's the 6? I says, that's what I need. He says, that's Sergio, the guy you cut from your team a year and a half ago. I thought he'd left the club. I thought he'd left the club. You went to play for Rob Kaminsky, I think, right? I
did.
He went to play for Rob Kaminsky.
Which was
not one team down, 2 teams down.
It was the third team.
Third team, and he played virtually every minute, every game, loved his time.
You sucked?
Pretty much.
he didn't, it wasn't a case of so much suck, it was like,
It just wasn't good.
His work ethic and his commitment and all that at that time was probably what it needed to be. Do you know what I'm saying? But then he went, and he wasn't getting a lot of game time, and you were a little bit, I don't want to say you were probably a little bit heavier a little bit at one point in time, and then you kind of grew a lot. You became really big and athletic, but he went and played on Rob Kaminsky's team. Rob Kaminsky loved him, and Rob Kaminsky, he probably played every minute of every game with Rob, and that probably helped you. People don't do that now.
Yeah.
They just don't. And then I remember, I remember you know, and I'm so proud of this guy that he's graduating Concordia, because he messed up big time when he was at West Coast. He had a full ride at Sacramento State, all set up and all that, and you know, I mean, I'm not going to say anything people don't know. He messed his grades up and all that, you know. Yeah. But again, you know, we went to so when we went to play National League in Vegas, and all the college coaches had come out to watch specific players, and we had 5 college coaches come up to us and say the best player they'd seen all weekend was Sergio, right? Which was probably true. He all of a sudden became a phenomenal player. And listen, I don't take credit for what happened. He takes credit for what happened because he actually stayed with the program.
Yeah.
Right? And if he would have been like any other kid and went chasing the same level of team, he was like, well, I just want to play. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I'm just assuming that's what he said. And then, no, he could have went to the second team. He didn't go that. He went to the third team and played every minute of every game and honed his skills and became a little bit more athletic. And then, you know, he played on one of the best 2,000 teams the club ever had, you know, and it's, you know, at that point in time. But again, you know, even at the end, you became a little bit disillusioned again, right, when you came back a little bit, right?
Yeah, because of my grades and whatnot.
Yeah, because your grades and all that, and you were disappointed. But, you know, we had you in strength and conditioning training. This guy missed nothing, right? He missed nothing. He came to everything. None of my team missed anything, to be fair,
yeah,
right?
Honestly, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, I was, you know, very, very strict disciplinarian, right? It's like, hey, you know, if you don't come to practice in my teams, do you play?
No.
No chance, right?
Just don't even show up to the game.
Don't even show up to the game, yeah. Right? Because if I have 20 guys and 18 guys show up to the game, even if you're my 2 best players, you don't play.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you play that player, and you guy, you know, your 16, 17 guy, they see, oh, Sergio didn't come to practice this week. I've got a chance of playing. And see, as soon as Sergio shows up and I'm playing before that guy, I lose that guy. Yeah. Completely lose him. When I might need that guy someday, right? And it's very difficult to do as a coach when you think you have to win games, right? But I also believe there's a higher power. You know, when God's looking down on you, He can do anything, right? For anybody, right? When, you know, I always believe if my best player doesn't show up for training that week and I still play him, I'm probably losing the game anyway. But if I do the right thing by the team, probably a better chance of winning the game. I remember going to National League one time out in, you remember Angel Morales, right?
Yep.
Angel Morales is a striker we had. Angel was very aggressive. Wasn't he a phenomenal finisher, but the guy could close down the whole back 4 on his own, right?
Yeah, he would steal so many balls.
Steal so many balls and talk about physical and powerful.
Yeah.
If you went shoulder to shoulder with him, you were eating dirt, 100%. Angel was my captain, but he was one of the quietest guys on the team.
He was the quietest guy.
He was the quietest guy in the team, but his work ethic, right, was
crazy.
So we go to North Carolina, and me and Brian Phillips at the time, we know you have to win the first game in North Carolina, right? And we're playing that night, and it's, I think the kid from LA that ended up going to Poland or something and playing Noel, and somebody else had, you know, they were 2 of the better players on the team, and there was a grey area where I could have actually justified playing them that night, right? Because we had strength and conditioning and we'd practice. 2 guys had missed strength and conditioning, 2 guys had missed practice. The two of the better players had missed practice, and 2 just regular players had missed strength and conditioning. So I'm like, well, I can justify leaving them in the 18-man squad. We're out there with 20, right? And I was like that, you know, I was kind of torn back and forward, and we're playing a really good team. And if you don't get off to a good start, you're done. And I'm like that, you know, I'm standing saying to Brian Phillips, and Angel Morales never does it, hardly says a word, right? But he was a good captain, you know, he was a good captain. But so I say, let me ask Angel, you know, get his feedback. So I say to Angel, these 2 guys missed training, these 2 guys missed strength and conditioning. And he just looked at me like that, coach. He says, these 2 guys don't play. I says, why? He says, they missed training, that's your rule. And I was like, wow, that is my rule. I was looking for a way out, even after that time. I was looking for a way to play those guys. And he turns around and goes like that, and he doesn't say a lot of words. Those 2 guys don't play. We won 1-0.
Oh, wow.
You know, sometimes, you know, maybe I was a little bit hard on them at times, you know, and, you know, maybe, you know, I mean, maybe a little bit aggressive with them at times, but if they would all run through a brick wall for me. They knew. I didn't have to tell them, right? It's like, they knew when if you didn't come at practice, they knew they weren't playing. I never had to tell them, I didn't have to answer with them, you know? Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the video online of when I lost a bet with these guys. Have you ever seen that video? So my wife was mad to say the least. She says like, what grown man gambles with teenage boys? Well, I did. So we're playing CRL, and we're maybe playing your team. We're playing Jerry Laterza's team, and we hated each other. Remember?
It was his team for sure.
Oh, you wore the skirt?
It's not a skirt. It's a kilt. Come on, dude. It's a freaking kilt.
Yes, you played against us wearing that.
Yeah. Because I lost a bet to these clowns. Right? And
I remember thinking, what is going on?
No, so they're like that. I'm saying, if you guys go undefeated, and they're like that, I'll do a dare, and they're like that. You have to wear your kilt to a game. So I'm like that.
That's what you guys all get on there?
Really, I'll send you the videos.
So I'm like playing in the group stages. I should have wore the kilt. I didn't. And then we get to the quarterfinals, and I'm like, maybe the guys have forgotten. And then we were playing on a Sunday, and we get to the semi-final. We're playing Jerry. You know how much we hated each other, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so now we're playing our biggest rivals. We hate each other. And the guys have went to me on the Saturday, coach, you haven't paid your bet yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like that. No. I'm like, no, I'm going to have to wear my kilt, and I'm playing Jerry Laterza. I'm like, no, and I'm like, so I'm like, okay, so I put the kilt on, and my kids and my wife are going like that. Are you out of your mind? And my wife's like, who gambles with teenage boys? I says, but I got to pay my bet, right?
You did.
And then I show up at the field, and we're playing in the field right in the middle of Silver Lakes. So I have to walk by all the other freaking games in my kilt with my bag of balls. And Justin Stevens sees me coming. He starts videoing and all that. Within 30 seconds, it's on social media, and he's put this Irish jig music on the back of it, right? And luckily, and I'm like that. You know how bad it's going to look if we lose today, because it was to go to the final. We ended up, we won 2-1 or something like that, didn't we?
Yeah.
We won 2-1 or 2-0 or something like that. But I couldn't get off the bench all day. I was sitting with my legs crossed like that all day because I was scared. I didn't.
Yeah.
You know the difference between a skirt and a kilt, right? No. A skirt you wear underwear under it. A kilt you don't wear anything.
No.
So
he was free. Bro.
I was like that, scared to jump up because the parents are across the other side, right?
God.
It's so I was scared. I was scared to jump up, and but we ended up. Luckily, we won 2-0. I think that was maybe the last time I gambled with anybody.
I'm gonna ask. I mean, you can answer it as honestly as you want, but what was how did that rivalry start between us?
Yeah, it was our teams just.
I think it was Jerry. Jerry was always. I think we were always a little bit better than you guys, right? I mean, you, and then there was a couple of boys on your team I'd probably tried to recruit a couple of times, and I always felt like Jerry was always like, as soon as we touch you guys, go down, fake it, get down. Jerry was a little bit like that. Not deliberately, and we got on fine. Jerry actually played in Hong Kong as well. After I played there,
I was thinking that too. He played in China.
That's why I became. I ended up becoming. I mean, there's no beef with me and Jerry now, and Sika was obviously the manager at the time. Good friends with Sika, but I think we were just both very, very competitive and very, very similar. I mean, Jerry wanted nothing better than for his kids to achieve things and for you guys to win and do well. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted the same for my guys, and we were kind of like very, very similar. And actually very similar backgrounds, very similar pathways. You know what I'm saying? And he was in Hong Kong, I was in Hong Kong. I mean, we're both competitive. But yeah, I mean, it was just we seemed to play each other a lot, and it was. It was
always I always enjoyed the games against you guys. That was because those were like the obvious, like, all right, this is going to be a tough game.
Yeah, absolutely. We were the two best teams probably in Cal South at that time.
We were the National Cup final, which is state championship. But I mean, there's no, you get soccer's a competitive game and all that. It's like. Sometimes you disrespect people or whatever on the side. I mean, listen,
I hated referees, right? Even when I played, I hated referees, and but again, now I'm like trying to advocate for. I think that every coach should have to get the referee license to get their coaching license.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all us coaches are out there ridiculing the referees. Me, the biggest culprit.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, well, why are we not willing to jump in the middle and take on the job ourselves? Why don't we do that?
That makes sense.
It's like, hey, we've all got a lot to say. What better than to have somebody with playing experience being the referee?
Yeah. That's the second time I've heard that actually about getting your reffing license if you're going to be a coach.
Imagine you made the part of the coaching license. You had to take the referee license. You would immediately have 1,000 new referees in Southern California.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And nobody's saying you have to ref, right?
Yeah.
But again, you and I think some of the clubs have to do a better job, engaging with the referees as well, especially with the referee associations. I was back in Scotland about 5 or 6 years ago, and my buddy runs a semi-pro club over there, and they just made a lot of law changes to the game, where if the ball hits the referee, it's a drop and all this stuff, and the top referee came out and spoke to the team. I think that would go a long way to helping, relationships with referees out here. Maybe when we have our beginning of the season, registration and all that, we invite the head referee association guy out to address the parents.
Yeah.
Maybe when you see a face and you realise these guys are normal, which I never realised they were normal because I still don't think they're that normal. But my daughter's actually trained to become a referee right now,
Wow.
And they're like that. Well, at least my dad's not coaching anymore, so I don't have to deal with him,
That's true.
I've reffed once, and it was worse.
It's very difficult, right?
It's difficult because you can't please anyone. Both
Anybody.
sides don't like you.
That's why soccer's a game of opinions, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, it's when people say, yeah, if we all like the same soccer player, everybody would just want to sign Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, but everybody's got a different opinion. You know what I mean? He might not fit into that team, or he might not fit into that team. But again, it's it's a game of opinions.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you because a bit of a theme that's been thrown around a little bit in this podcast is like rejection.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice to young players dealing with rejection, or will inevitably deal with some sort of rejection in their career?
I think a lot of it comes down to your personality to begin with, right? And everybody handles rejection differently, and there's such widespread notice today with mental health and things like that, and and there's a lot of help out there for kids with rejection and things like that. Now, I always, when I got rejected, which I got rejected a lot, right? I had the determination I'm going to prove you wrong, right? If you look at Sergio, Sergio's whole goal in life might not have been, hey, I'm going to prove Neil wrong at that point in time. Maybe it was I just want to play more, right? But unconsciously, he stayed at the club. Unconsciously, when that guy told me that I should be a baker, right? Now, at that time, I was probably crying, right? But I don't remember, but it still stuck with me, right? Right? And it's you can, I'm in sales now, right? I work for a company called LCP Tracker. I sell software to government agencies and big general contractors. I deal with multi-million, billion-dollar organisations every single day, and it's kind of like sales to a certain aspect. When you're a soccer player, it's like every no leads to a yes. Eventually leads to a yes. They say no, they say no, they say no. It's a lot of it's to deal with. To be successful is to find the right coach in the right place that actually believes in you.
Right.
Like when I went to Albion Rovers and I cut my face, and Mick Oliver says, like, that's my guy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I maybe wasn't the best player, but I filled a hole in his team where he thought that guy's going to be useless, probably was useless, useful to me, Maybe after he signed me, he thought I was useless. But again, any young player that gets rejected, there's so many sports in America, right? So a lot of times the kid gets rejected, and a lot of times mum and dad's got a lot to do with it, right?
Yeah.
I try and tell, you know, when my daughters played, right? When my daughters played and I coached my daughters, I never thought I would coach girls, but I got 3 daughters, you know, and 2 grandsons now, so they're next to get coached, you know. Yeah, my oldest grandson's 2 years old. He's nuts, you know. He's just nuts. Loves the soccer. Loves the Glasgow Rangers. You know, sings the Glasgow Rangers song, Follow.
I wonder why.
You know? Yeah. It's like his dad's a Real Madrid fan, you know, and I tell him, I'm like, hey, Real Madrid can be your second team. You know, people choose to be Real Madrid fans. You don't choose to be a Rangers fan. You're born a Rangers fan.
There you go.
You know, and so when Real Madrid were playing the Champions League final last week, I got a video of my grandson. His dad puts a Real Madrid jersey on him and he goes like, "Go Rangers!" my daughter texts me right away. She's like, "What have you done to my son?" You know. But again, you know, you have to love the game and it affects you differently. So when a kid gets rejection, you know, it's there's a lot of things go into rejection now, right? You know, I've been heavily involved in the Hispanic community for over 20 odd years. You know what I'm saying? You know, helped. You know, I did an article at West Coast with the pay-to-play model, and I say, listen, you know, we've spent millions on scholarship players over the years. If you couldn't afford to play, I don't know if I've ever rejected a player. If you're good enough, the club will always find a way for you to play and a way to help you out, right? And you know, but again, when it goes to the next level, right? And I think there's more money involved when you graduate high school. And maybe, you know, some of the disadvantaged kids or the inner city kids, their parents can't fund them to maybe take a year out and go and try out to be a pro, right. You know, maybe some of the other families, they actually can try and fund them and let them take a little bit of time. But I also think, you know, and people will probably shoot me down for this, I think the college system here is broken, you know. And the reason I say that is, could you imagine this, right? Imagine when you graduated high school, right, that you were able to go for 4 years and try and be a pro somewhere. That's your highlight years, right?
Right.
You know, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? But by the time you're 21 or 22 that you've tried, and even if you've had a little Mickey Mouse contract at some pro team in South Mexico or something like that, in 3rd division or something like that, that you could still come back and get your college degree when you were 22 and play college soccer. Don't you think that more players would try and go and follow their dreams?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, the problem is in this country is that you know, if you go and follow your dreams and try to become a pro and you actually sign any kind of pro contract, then you lose your eligibility. Even although there's 1,000 European players here that have all had pro experience and they turn a blind eye to it, right? They're taking, and I'm going to open a can of worms here, they're taking a lot of spots away from a lot of American boys.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, your 18-year-old American kid now can't compete with a 24-year-old European kid, Norwegian kid, Danish kid, Scottish kid, you know. But imagine if you guys, you know, at 18 were able to go. I know you went to Chivas or something at one point in time, and they were kind of maybe sniffing around you or maybe going to do something. But could you imagine if you would have been able to go to Chivas, play 3 or 4 years, get rejected, but know that you could come here and a college could sign you and still scholarship you.
Well, that's actually a big reason why I didn't stay
Yeah.
with the U20 team, because it's like I can stay with the U20 team, but if I get injured, I don't have school anymore.
Yeah, but imagine if you could have done it, you would have stayed.
I would have stayed.
You would have stayed, right?
Yeah.
And then you play 4 years or 3 years. But let's say you say if you come back by the time you're 21 or 22, you still qualify for financial aid. The schools are doing it anyway.
Yeah.
They're giving it to the European kids. Why not give it to you?
Yeah.
Right? Imagine you knew to yourself that you're a good player, Rafa, right? You went to UCI, you played at a good level, you know what I'm saying? But can you imagine you could have went and tried your luck in the 1st division in Mexico, the 1st division in Europe, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And still know you're not going to get any worse unless you get a bad injury and you know you could still come back and go to school and get it paid for.
Right.
Would you have done it?
Yeah.
You would have done it.
Yeah.
You know, you would have found that money, you would have found a way. Mm-hmm. But the thing is in me is like, the Europeans are getting that, right? They're coming here. The international players are getting that, right? Mm. I mean, the international players, nobody's telling me those guys don't have professional experience. Yeah. It's just turning a blind eye to it, right?
Right.
You know, but again, you know, nobody wants controversy. But you know, You can rely on raw meat to give you some confidence.
Get the views up. That's what.
Any other questions, guys, before we wrap up?
So, you mentioned a bit like the teams you've had amazing teams.
Yeah.
And that, yes, like you can build the team up, but I think one of your strengths, for at least my team in particular, I think you recruited perfectly for that team.
Yeah.
And some guys you already had from years prior, like
Yeah.
Blake, Dylan. But me, like that you brought into the team, Noel, Nick, Kevin.
Yeah.
What do you look for when you're recruiting a player? What do you identify?
I mean, I think like when you go to, and I agree with you, I think that's something I'm actually pretty good at. You know, I can take a look at a player and see where they're going to fit into my team.
Yeah.
And go after them. And people say, oh, you know, just develop. It's like, yeah, but, you know, there's a part of the way that I coached where, you know, I introduced discipline, you know, commitment, you know what I'm saying? You know, where, you know, when my teams could be down 5-0 and there's not one guy will down tools. Never. Right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
You know, it would be like, hey, they'll roll up them sleeves and I could be just sitting there on the bench laughing my ass off because these guys will be like, they'll do it themselves. You know? And if they ever got beat one week, I knew the next week it was a slam dunk we're going to win because they'd be so mad at themselves to go out. But again, you know, when you're piecing teams together, I remember, you guys know Juan Pablo Oseguera?
Yes. Yeah.
You know Juan Pablo, right? So Juan Pablo played for Braden Cloutier, right? This is a true story. Juan Pablo was one of the best strikers in Southern California at the time, right? In 15, 16, left foot, played in the wing, phenomenal player. There was a tryout for the national team and they were playing, Bruce Arena was in the national team manager, and there was a tryout up at the Home Depot Centre. And me and Braden were like that. I'm not Braden. Me and Braden like that. Juan Pablo's not good enough to be a forward at the next level, right? This is a true story, right? Should be a left back. He's like that. Let's tell him. That night he played left back. Was the best player on the field.
Wow.
Even Bruce Arena said that the guy in the red shoes is the best player out here by a mile.
Oh wow.
And he played left back for the first time that night, right? And it was like, and where did he play? And but Juan Pablo been around Chivas, Tigres, and all that. I mean, the decent career.
Yeah.
But played left back. Played in the US U20 national team as a left back. He was a great left back, right? But again, it's like things like that and being able to spot things like that, you know. But then again, when you spot things like that, as well as sometimes the parents don't buy into it. I remember when I had a team with Oliver Wies, right? And Oliver, we had I'm not going to mention the kid's name because I don't know who's watching what, but the kid was a striker. Wasn't a good striker. Was a poor striker. And me and Oliver's like, he's a right back, right? And but we knew if we played him right back, his parents would leave the club, right? So we bit a bullet and we played him at right back one game. Parents left. They went to United Football Club. He played for 5 more years there under Josh Stringer and that. Where do you think he played? Right back. Right? But it's funny, right? Because the parents want to say, hey, you know, you're a striker, Rafa. You know what I'm saying? The coach thinks you're a right back, right? But your parents are so desperate to play striker, they leave the club and you go to the next club, you have zero power because you've already left one club.
Yeah.
And then that coach tells you you're a centre back and you have to play there because you have no option now.
Yeah.
You know, but again, you know, I think, you know, like with me going back to, you know, I've always had a vision to see players and where they could fit into places and also personalities, right? Certain types of players came to play for me. You know, when I was, you know, I would say I was hard but very fair, right? I would go to war for my players. You guys knew that, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I might rip you a new one sometimes, which would happen, but the only time I've told guys, I probably told Sergio this, when I stopped shouting, it's me, I've gave up you. Yeah. When I've gave up on you at that point in time, you know, you might as well leave, right? Because when I've gave up on you, it's just because I think I can get more out of you, you can become more, you can do better, you know what I'm saying? You know, but it's also you yourself have to have that drive. But I would always, you know, was drawn towards those types of players that I think I could get a little bit more out, that would work a little bit harder. My teams always worked very, very hard, and my teams were always very, very disciplined. If I called those guys at 9 o'clock at night and said, hey, a guy called me for a scrimmage at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had 20 guys, I would have 18 at that scrimmage. Yeah. Right? They would just get in their cars and drive, you know? The 2 guys that couldn't was because they're out of town. I mean, that was literally, you know, it was just, I mean, I was good to the boys, you know. I mean, you know, I had good relationships with the boys, but I was never their friends. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was always their coach. Yeah. You know, and I think as well, like, no everybody comes back and says hi, Neil, and all that, and no everybody invites you to their graduation or their wedding or their births. Yeah, some guys do, you know, but you know, we probably had run-ins multiple times with Sergio. Sergio probably at times thought I was an a-hole, and probably was. and you know, but again, though, right, it's like, you know, when guys think back about me, they'll probably speak like, hey, you know, you did it to help us, you know what I'm saying? Right. I never did it because I wanted to win games. Win games was just was just the outcome of hard work and discipline. Right. You know? I mean, we were one of the first clubs, if not the first club, to start doing weight training. Yeah. Right? Remember? I
remember when you told us. Yeah, you told us the whole team was like, "What?" Like.
Yeah. It's like, you know, I remember one of the parents saying that my son should never have to lift anything heavier than a pair of women's legs above his head. That's what a parent said to me. No, if I'm not joking, that's what they said to me. Yeah. I'm not going to say what parents said that. They actually went to the board at West Coast and says, my son shouldn't be lifting anything heavier than that above his head.
That's crazy.
You know, the kid couldn't. I mean, at that, when we went to do CrossFit, you used to lift a plastic pipe that weighed about 16 ounces, right? But when you first started lifting it, it weighed nothing, right? Yeah. But after you had to do the technique, how heavy was that plastic pipe? You could lift it with your finger. No, when the guy we had trained them, and we went to CrossFit and people was against CrossFit, but we adapted the whole process. Yeah. Nobody was doing it when we did it. Not one other club was doing it. We did it twice a week, and we did strength and conditioning twice a week
before practice too.
Before the practice too, and you guys got used to it, right? You guys used to look forward to it. Justin was great with you guys, right?
So good.
And I never ever went to it. So it was another guy that was telling them how things should be done. Not my voice. No. I hardly ever went to it. I didn't have to go to it. If those guys were out of line, Justin whacked them in line. Yeah. If I had a problem, if I said to, you know, Sergio needs a little bit more conditioning, he's come back for injury, Justin would put him in the air bike or whatever. And I mean, we were one of the first clubs outside of like the academies to introduce strength and conditioning. Even the high schools didn't do it.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that and thinking that was sick. That was cool.
Yeah.
To wrap it up, I just want to say like a big thank you. I know I've never got really the chance to after playing for you, but you're like the single greatest influence on me in terms of soccer because you showed me that I can do something with or in soccer, and I really appreciate you for that. To everybody I talk to, I hold you to the highest regard, and I really just wanted to give you your flowers right now and just know that I'll always have you in my heart, and you mean a lot to me. So just thank you for coming on.
Me crying, dude. Honestly, but, you know, but again, you know, that's why you do it. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's like if you can take a little bit of what I teach you, good and bad. You know, and you pick and choose what you can, you know, and you see when you get a little bit older and you maybe have to coach yourself, and you're like, my coaching wasn't easy for my coach. You know what I'm saying? And but again, you are, you know, and I'm not just saying this because you're there. I tell your story to virtually every kid that doesn't want to take a step down. I virtually tell your story to every single kid. Me and Brian Phillips virtually tell your story to everybody. And I tell them, if there's no coach at West Coast that doesn't know your story, hey, this guy got cut from my team, I didn't even know where he was. He never went to the second team, he went to the third team. People don't do that today. Yeah. You know, and then he gets the play time, comes up, and all of a sudden, you know, when I goes to, I remember the night at Lake Forest Sports Park, and I pulled your dad aside and says to your dad, hey, you know, and I had no financial aid available at that time, and he's on the team, no disrespect, was getting some financial aid at that time.
I needed it.
And I'm like, and I didn't have any financial aid to give him, and he still came and played on the team. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we had a good team, and you was a very, very big part of it, you know?
Thank you.
And it's, you know, to see him graduating now and getting involved in soccer and being at Concordia and all that, because, I mean, you went through that period, kind of like you did in your soccer career. You went away, came back. Yeah. Then you went away, wanted to go into college, right?
Yeah.
Went to Golden West. Didn't go that great there for you either,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Get to Concordia, get in a good environment again. Now you get a bachelor's degree. Probably the first generation to get your bachelor's in your family, right?
Yeah.
Your little brother's still one of my best though, but you know, like, has he never told you his little brother stories? Oh my God. His brother, I used to give him a medal for every game, right?
Yeah,
He says
I
hi,
remember
actually.
that, I
Right,
remember that.
every medal for every game. But so we used to do the ice baths. We were the first person to do the ice bath. The guys hated it.
Yeah.
So we jerry rigged an ice bath at the soccer field at the West Coast tournament. Sergio put his little brother in it. He almost had a cardiac arrest. You know, Sergio put him right in the ice bath, right on the didn't he? It's like that. He was not happy. You know. His little brother used to come and every game, I forget his name now.
Angel.
He's probably 16 now or something, right?
14.
14. And he used to come to every final. And every final, I'd pull him up and give him a medal, right?
Yeah.
Every single final, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing those pictures.
Guys, I really appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to come and
Thank you.
tell a bit of my story. Some of it I'm sure people have never heard. But listen, I think at the end of the day, you guys are doing a great job. You know, you get some more Scottish guys on here, I'll be happy. Don't never invite the Celtic fans on here. You know, once you do that, you lose me, you know. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at @without_athletics. You can follow Sergio.
Yeah. _Gutierrez Sergio is my account, and then Coach Selection on Instagram too.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram too, but I have no clue what is it? Is it Nearly Boy something or something? My daughter set it up for me.
Raw me, I think it is.
No, it's
Raw
Nearly Raw Me, Nearly Boy @Nearly Boy or something like that. It was these guys, but tag West Coast as well. I'm sure.
Okay.
You know, West Coast got a few followers these days. Tag them as well, and you know, hopefully you guys can keep doing this. You know, I think you guys are doing an awesome job. You know.
Appreciate it.
And if there's ever anybody comes in that I think could maybe come and add to your podcast,
Oh,
comes
for
into
sure.
town, I'll
Yes, please.
you know
For sure.
hook you up. You know.
Thank you.